dear friends, or should I say dear survivors, I think the first thing which I would like to say is that the speakers today gave us a lot of reasons to agree and a lot of reasons to disagree, which is actually probably also the purpose of the conference itself. And it's good that we are still able and ready to listen to each other. I have actually the written conclusions, which are pretty nice speech, which I have in the meantime listening to you, that I will throw them away and just tell you some of the things which are broadly the comments of the things which I have heard during the day. The first thing which I would like to share with you, it's not directly linked to today's conference, but it's pretty important part of the fact which I'm noticing. It's more linked to the environmental community, but broadly it's linked to where we are going. So I was just recently 2 weeks in Nairobi. There was actually the United Nations Environment Assembly. For those who don't know what that is, it was the 6th occasion. It's a gathering of all environmental ministers from all the world. Few thousand people, so crowded, and a lot of debates and then conclusions which they are taken. So what was my sense, which is not the sense only linked to that kind of event, but basically to all these international gatherings which are. There were actually 2 UNEA conferences. One was the UNEA conference of all stakeholders outside being sincere, talking about the necessary changes and so on. But unfortunately, the other more important was in negotiating rooms, where it's absolutely clear that geopolitics is very much stepped in those rooms. And behind those geopolitics also still very much strong economic interests of various countries which are behind. And you can, I will not go into detail, but you can read it very clearly behind the statements which one has noticed. Also, the COP and the other similar gatherings, I think, are pretty much on that line. And I think it's then environmental, those who are responsible for environment, and I was once, are complaining that economic people don't hear them and that they are not really present in New York and so on. They can't hear us because we cannot even agree among ourselves. So it was pretty daunting, the whole experience, and I think that we will need to find a bit more clear language, and also we were not able even, or better to say, they were not able to adopt the circular economy resolution, which is, by the way, I think, no-brainer, but some do consider it that there is still more Western type of new way how to get a kind of internationally protected relations via the Global South. Anyway, a few questions which were today on the table. One was, what is actually the motive for change? Because I absolutely agree that you need a positive motive, that we humans are based very much on that positivism. But if we are entirely honest, it's pretty much the fears which are changing our behavior. If you just want to take the quite recent example, that was the COVID example. So when we take something for serious, we act immediately. Second, the governments tend to act a bit slowly and when everything else is exhausted. Third, there is not a lack of financial support, and you can gather financial support immediately if it's necessary. There is not a lack of innovation. You can actually boost it in a time frame which nobody actually expected that we can come to the conclusion. Is the system change possible? Ask yourself if we would be able to work from home today if there would not be COVID. Never, because we would never come to that conclusion without being pushed into that new reality. Or ask yourself, because we discuss a lot about what a human needs. Ask yourself how much of the clothes you were actually wearing during the COVID comparing to the pre-COVID period. And then ask yourself even more important question, were you happier or less happier? And you will find out that changes are possible. that we can get enough of financial power, enough of innovation power behind, only if we take it seriously. Which brings you to the conclusion that, unfortunately, the things which we are discussing here, at least from environmental perspective, but also from agri perspective, are not yet taken seriously enough. And that is, so today, if you want to be optimistic, it's hard to be science-based and optimistic at the same time, to be honest. So it's a bit bitter feeling which I have, but I sincerely have an enormous hope which is linked to the young generation from various reasons, because they have a long-term perspective, because they are more aware of the facts, because they are less ownership biased, because also they have no other choice, because we have not left them with other choice. But they are hope. And I think if we, and I will also give you one example where we would need to go, but I think it's really important that we keep, that we integrate them as much. And we have heard the young farmer from Belgium, I think he was excellent today, telling us what is actually worrying them. On the incentives and to producers and consumers, because that was enormous debate today about incentives and how the things would need to be better organized. And we have discussed even carbon pricing for agriculture. But one thing which we haven't really discussed a lot, but I think we have discussed it basically concerning the trade, because we have discussed a bit these questions which are related to border taxation and everything, or the border instruments in the context of the trade. But taxing, it's a serious question, because I was heading the Slovenian Institute for Macroeconomic Analysis, and my constant fight was with the Ministry of Finance. I still firmly believe that the ministers of finance do not understand what is their role. They think that their role is keeping the budgets in balance, but yeah, it is also the role, but their core role is actually giving signals to producers and consumers where we should go, and keeping through that also the competitiveness side of our story. So taxing more the things which we want less, taxing less the things which we want more. Using public procurement like it should be used. Using state subsidies like it should be used. Getting rid of tax havens, which we have even in Europe. These are escape rooms for rich people and rich companies not to even pay fair taxes. It's ridiculous that we allow something like that still being among us. But that's where we basically are. And I think that I would be first in favor that we more share sovereignty concerning taxes on EU level, because we use them too much for, I would say, unfair competition and our own interests, instead that we would use it for the drive to collectively change in something which we need. About control and trust, which was also one of the questions, that they should be better balanced. That's no-brainer, that some things are going too far and that we would need to go back with that, and I fully agree with that. But, since I was commissioner, honestly, if you are commissioner who basically is not noticed in the mandate, or commissioner who is even doing some policies wrong, you can easily survive. But if you spend some money wrong, you will never survive. Because there is a huge control which is actually imposed mainly from the member states, that you do what you do and how you do. And if you want just an anecdote, it's short, but it's telling you enough. When I was young commissioner, really young, I was the first time invited in the European Parliament, and I was asked what I think about timesheets. That's actually the recording of the time with researchers use. And for me, that was so absurd that I basically said, that's I have heard for that last time in my socialist history, and I was always doing it end of the month because I knew what I need to put in from the demand side of my authorities. There was, unfortunately, it was the wrong committee. It was Committee for Financial Control. So, and it was half a minute silence, and then I learned my lecture. But okay, that's how the things go. So it's not so much common sense, but it's really this, are we doing the right steps or not? And two things which I would like to comment before I go to something which I need to read from the script because it's very much connected with the forum itself. One is on the stakeholders' engagement, whom to consult, and the governance. You know, being more than 10 years in the Commission, if there is anything, is an obsession with consultants. So you have to consult everybody. And in specific cases like they were mentioned, truly it happens that there are not right and proper consultation and that not everybody is asked. And we have seen few of those examples today, which is happening. But in essence, we have always aspired, and also the whole forum, it's because we aspire for that each one would hear each one and that we would listen carefully. But I think, but if you would want to look to one example from the European Commission history where the change really happened, look what was the organization in the climate and energy field, because we have now energy transition. So they were simply put in the same shoes, both. And climate people were forced to think about how energy transition is actually a difficult process, which they didn't think before. And the energy people were simply forced to look in these climate figures a bit more seriously than they were looking before. And we got a movement and we got a connection which actually changed the reality. Indeed, today, I would again put them separate because it's becoming the burden because they don't look beyond the energy transition. But anyway, it was a real mover. So if you would like, and I will now say a sentence which might sound to you really strange. Common agriculture policy is the strongest financial environmental instrument. Environmental. It's also, of course, agricultural, but life, it's not to the knees of the life instrument if it would be used in a proper way. So why don't we really put environmental and agri people more in the same shoes? Why we don't use that kind of things which are in both interests would not be somehow more jointly governed, and that interest would be seen, that we would actually create the possibility that some of the lock-ins would be overcome in the future. And the second proposal which I would do, and I have done it at UNEA already publicly, each government would need to nominate a minister for future generations, as well as Commission would need to have a commissioner for future generations. Why? Because all governments are prone to follow the urgent, but tend to leave aside the important part. And I think it's really important that somebody in the government would take care that the important things would not become urgent things, sorry. And that is, I think, a bit lacking currently in those situations. And finally, just a comment on because we are pretty much in this debate now in Brussels and surroundings about European Green Deal, its importance in the past and its future. Should it be in the future? Because there is more and more rumors which are putting today competitiveness again in the first place. And there are even so nice sentences like competitiveness and environment can go hand in hand, like we would return in time 20 years, fine. Cool for me, but inventing history, it's also nice to do. But yeah, of course they can go hand in hand and they should go hand in hand. It's no-brainer. But European Green Deal in my times would never be acceptable. So it was a visionary document. And it was really a kind of breakthrough thinking of where we would need to go. By the way, this conference is European Green Deal conference very much. It's pretty much discussing exactly about two sides of the same story. I will, and when we talk about European competitiveness, yeah, of course, you have to take environmental considerations also in that context, but we have to be fair in assessing those things. Do you think that European industry today would not be under competitiveness pressure without anything happening in the environment? Of course would be, because the world has changed, because China and others are there and are coming, even competing with us on the things which we have through the European Green Deal put on the table, like electric cars, like solar panels and so on. So it's, and when you hear about what is happening in AI, dear friends, this is really frightening. And I wonder how this conference will look 5 years from now. But believe me, I'm absolutely sure that in 10 years we will talk about universal basic income. Because if AI will start taking the jobs which are today taken by humans, like Elon Musk basically said on the conference, when AI will be fully fledged, we will no need human employment, then we will have a real problem. And it is absolutely necessary to understand that all the transitions which we are talking about in environmental area, they are we cannot manage them without simultaneously discussing social questions. And many of you came basically to that conclusion without really saying that. So social and environmental transitions should go hand in hand, full stop. If it will not go hand in hand, you cannot basically see that one will happen in reality without the other. So my plea would be, so we shouldn't talk about should we continue with European Green Deal or not, because it's a wrong question. Where we should deepen it and how to make it implementable, that's the real question. And if I would have any plea to you, it's please don't lobby against the continuation of European Green Deal, because it is not in your interest, even if you think it is. So that's leading me now to more things which I have to read because they are important also for you, and it's better if I make it in a way like they are written. So you remember that we have all committed last year for something which we call for action, where we wanted to go from the what to the how and also to the who. And our director, Mark Titterington, said earlier that we will publish our first progress report in the coming month. So over the past year, we have really concentrated in particular on how to develop and scale regenerative agriculture and the alignment of public and private market incentives to support farmers in making and sustaining the transition. So many of partners are already on this journey as well, and I welcome their efforts they are making to support farmers, particularly in adopting more sustainable practices and developing innovative and creative solutions that reward them for doing so. Our call to action is, however, just a start, and we all recognize the need to go further, faster, to make individual contributions part of this systemic change, especially in developing and translating new thinking, ideas, solutions into practice that actually grow the income of farmers and land managers, as well as achieving biodiversity net gain. This will be our focus going forward because, as Mark said, nobody can be happy with where we are, and only by working together we can change the dynamic of the current protests which we face. We look forward to sharing more with you in the coming month on our call to action progress, and of course also getting your feedback. One thing which I would like to mention before going to thank yous, having committed the forum to play its part tackling the mentioned challenges and driving change through the call to action, we strengthened also our ability to deliver our mission and commitments with establishment of the new advisory group, small group, 3 persons. We will be held by Tassos Haniotis, Senior Guest Research Scholar at the International Institute for Applied System Analysis and former Director of at EC, which European Commission, which you know pretty well. Geneviève Pons, Director General and Vice President Europe, Jacques Delors, and Anne Tutwiler, Chair of the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition and former Director General of Biodiversity International. So, which leads me now to the last part, which is most important and also pleasurous. I would like to thank you all who have contributed to the success of our forum, also in my own name, our strategic partners, IUCN, TNC, ELO, Cargill, and Syngenta, and of course also to all other partners here with us today and also supporting us during the whole year. Our supporters continue to grow, and I would also like to in particular welcome and thank our newest members, including the Login 5 Foundation and the Renature for investing their trust and confidence in the forum. I would also like to thank the Forum Secretariat members led by Emma with the great help of Elodie. They are the engine. They deserve the applause indeed. They are the engine behind everything we see, we hear, we enjoy. And I would also, of course, like to thank Mark, Forum Strategic Right Hand and Mind, still traveling around, still investing his time in making Forum broader and deeper, sustainably and geographically. Substantially and geographically. To the technical crew for keeping us in the safe hands, thank you. Special thanks go to the fantastic couple of moderators, to Stephen and Rose, even if they are not here, or in particular because they are not anymore here, it's good that we still keep in mind on them. It's a real pleasure to see the true professionals at work, effective, challenging, but always respectful. This is critical for keeping the relations among all on a needed and also desired level. They are staying with us already for many years, which deserves special level of gratitude. And so we have indeed landed. So my final thank you goes to all of you, participants who have stayed with us in the room or on the net. As without you and without your attention, frankly, our efforts would be meaningless. Thank you for joining us also this year, and I hope you will be with us also in the year to come. Safe way back home for those who need to travel, and to everybody, take care. And just the final message, because we have discussed a lot about optimism today, and since we have to end with optimistic message, stay optimistic, because optimists live longer and better. Thank you.